Hey there, Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. Welcome to day 199 of our Get Your Goals annual challenge. We're talking about relationships today, relationship goals this month, and specifically the impact of criticism and judgments on our relationships. Talk about a couple of topics. As usual, you can go to guide 17 of the Get Up and Go challenge private Facebook group, and you can see a write-up on all these things, but I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that are really important with respect to criticism and judgments when it comes to our relationships. And then, of course, a couple of things that we can do to make sure that we are fostering and cultivating great relationships in any area and aspect of our life. So what are some of the challenges with criticism? And then our action item today is going to be to rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I don't do it, I never do it, I never criticize or judge the person I'm in a relationship with. 10 being, yeah, I do it a lot. I'm very critical, I'm very judgmental of the other person. Now remember, we learned yesterday that life is a mirror, and so if we are being judgmental and critical of other people, we're probably also being very judgmental and critical of ourselves. And that hinders our relationships as well. The harder we are on ourselves, the harder we are on other people, the harder it is to cultivate great relationships. Well, let's talk a little bit about criticism and the vicious cycle that criticism creates. If we criticize, it causes emotional impact, it erodes trust, it hinders growth, and does all kinds of other bad things. So how do we recognize and address this? Well, we can address criticism once we're aware of it and we notice that it's happening, by doing self-reflection. Hey, do I do this? That's why we're rating ourselves today. Do I criticize? Do I judge? Now, sometimes you might not be very critical, but you're judging, and kind of criticism and judgment are tied together, right? If every time you watch the news you're screaming and yelling at the television, it might be an indication that you're a little judgmental or critical, or that you're watching the wrong things. We can practice empathy. We can use effective communication. We can set boundaries to reduce criticism, etc. in our relationships. So let's talk about judgment for a couple of seconds. Judgment, what's the role of judgment in our relationships? Now, you have to decide for you, based on the relationship, what is the appropriate amount or role judgment plays in your relationships. Now, assessment and judgment aren't necessarily the same thing. Assessing a situation is just looking at it, I guess, objectively and talking about the facts of the situation. It's not judging, it's not saying something's good or bad, it's just saying what is. So we want to do assessments. We want to assess how is our relationship going, but we don't necessarily want to judge it. We definitely don't want to compare it to anyone else's relationships, right? We want to be aware of the danger of assumptions. So often we make assumptions in our communications and in our relationships, and that's usually detrimental, because I don't know about you, but I am not a mind reader. So when I am assuming something, I'm going based on my past experiences and relationships, not on the other person's. And I often find that I am absolutely 100% wrong, which is hard to admit sometimes, but true. The impact that judgment and criticism has on intimacy. We want to think about that, and we want to think about fostering understanding in our relationships. We can assess and judge, but we need to communicate about it and let the other person know what we're thinking. So what are some ways to cultivate positive relationship goals? And we've talked about all of these, and we'll continue to talk about them for the rest of the month. 1, mutual respect and support. 2, practice gratitude. 3, conflict resolution. 4, sharing vulnerabilities. 5, embracing growth together. Those are all great things that we can do to minimize criticism, minimize judgment, and improve our relationships. So again, what's our action item today? Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, I don't do this at all. I don't criticize or judge my person I'm in a relationship with. 10 being, yeah, I do it all the time, so maybe I better do some self-reflection and ask myself, am I judging myself the same way? Am I very critical and very judgmental of myself? And how is that impacting my relationships? That's it. Have an awesome day. Any questions, hit me up. Otherwise, I'll be with you tomorrow. Bye.